So we're going to, in just a moment, I'm going to ask our board and founders who are here to come up and officially kick off the voting village. Thanks, Vic. Yeah. Of course, Jeff is not here. Please come on up. Hopefully the weight limit of the stage can support us. And, yeah. There's another one there. Is that? Oh yeah, that's the audio. That's right. Okay. Great. All right. We're about to find out what the weight limit of the stage is, and. If you'd like, you can sit. You're an old man.
I'm the oldest.
You're the wisest.
That's also true.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This session will be basically an introduction to what we're trying to do this weekend, and also we want to introduce ourselves personally to everyone. My name is Matt Blaze. I'm the current president of the Election Integrity Foundation, which is a nonprofit that we formed basically to run the voting village. This is our 10th year doing this. Of course, we had the COVID interruption. I'd like to ask all of our founders and board members who are here to just quickly introduce themselves, and also, and I'm putting you on the spot, just say a word or two about why you think this is an important thing to be spending your DEF CON doing. So,
Start me? All right. I guess I'll trade with you. Hello, everyone. Brian DeMuth. I'm the current treasurer of the Election Integrity Foundation with Matt. And I think this is a really important endeavor so that we, one, really just understand what the risks and the threat levels are, and get to the bottom of what could be better. Can we do mobile voting in the future? Can we do different things? Can we have auditing that's appropriate? And I think everyone here has a different aspect of that they're passionate about. In general, I just want to see that stuff exposed, because the more you shine a light on it, the better it typically will get. And so that's my mission here, is to help make that happen.
Hi, I'm Jake Braun. I'm co-founder of the Voting Village. I'm currently executive director of the Cyber Policy Initiative at University of Chicago, and was most recently the acting principal deputy national cyber director in the White House. Part of the reason that I worked with Matt and others to stand this up years ago was because democracy is the foundation of our society, and citizens' ability to have a franchise and a say in their government. And if that's undermined, then our entire society is undermined. And so that's why this is so incredibly important. Thanks.
So I'm David Jefferson. I'm on the board also of the Election Integrity Foundation. But I've been doing election integrity work for about 27 years now, since 1999. I spend most of my energy over the years working on internet voting and making the case for how dangerous it is and why we just do not want to be voting online. Of course, I'm concerned about the integrity of our elections at all levels, but specifically for the cybersecurity of voting systems themselves. The voting systems we have out there have tremendous vulnerabilities, horrendous vulnerabilities all over the country. That's not to say that they have been exploited. That's not to say that any elections have been overturned by technical attacks, but they could be, and that's what we're worried about. That's what this voting village is trying to prevent.
Hi, Philip Stark. I've been working in a semi-serious way about election security and auditing since about 2007, so not quite 20 years. I think that the work that the Voting Village does and the DIF does is important because it kind of broadens the knowledge base. It's kind of expanding the frontier of what the vulnerabilities are and making it clear that the attack surface is large and the system isn't very well defended. Before the 2016 election, it was very difficult to get people's attention. After the 2016 election, we started to run into, or the 2020 election, run into election denialism. And I think to a great extent, EIF and the Voting Village are combating vulnerability denialism, which is really rampant on the left. So just trying to get this all realistic. And I'm sure you all have your own reasons for being here. I'd love to hear those.
Man, how do you follow all that? It's great to see you all. My name is Kendall Spencer. I am the lawyer. I met Matt Blaze when I was finishing law school in 2018, 2019. I've been part of the Voting Village ever since. And, I think Jake really said it best here. This is an incredibly important aspect of our democracy. And I think what we're doing here is we're putting thoughts and words to action. And part of that includes this responsibility that we've inherited for this nation to uphold the institutions that help run our democracy and to really make sure we're doing everything we can to protect the tools that make it safe to be able to do that. And so that's why this work is incredibly important to me. We'll be talking about that throughout the weekend, but it's great to have you all here.
I was just lurking right next to you. I don't know what Jake said, so whatever he said. And then I'll just did you give him a brief history of kind of the origin story?
We have time.
The origin story was I was talking on the phone with Jake, and I think you were complaining about the 2016 election, as one does. And he says, you've got, those voting machines have got to have been insecure. They've got to be insecure. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're totally insecure. We've had talks at DEF CON in the past, black box voting. But the problem is, are these NDAs, you can't get your hands on the equipment. There's just, like nobody's gotten a chance to play with it. But it's got to be riddled full of problems. And we're complaining about it, and I'm sitting there, and I just search online. And on eBay, there's voting machines. And I just start buying every voting machine I can find on eBay. And I mean, we start hoovering them all up, and I'm like, I'm getting the machines. And then, like, literally within days, it was like, okay, now the machines are arriving, like, who knows how to take apart the machines? We're like, okay, we gotta, like, I need Matt. Like, there were very few people that were active in voting integrity. And it just turned out, luckily, that the DMCA had an exception put in the year before for safe harbor provision for hacking critical, it was election, medical, life safety. There's like
Consumer products.
and consumer products. And so all of a sudden, we're protected legally if we take these things apart. And the manufacturers just wanted to sue us. We got threatening letters. They wanted to intimidate us and not do this. And but we had this exception. And so we could tell them, too bad, so sad. And it turns out this community, the DEF CON, this community generally wants to help. And they don't know how to help. And so as soon as you say, we've got this tech, here's some people that kind of know how it works, come hack on it, they're like, yes, like you've given me some direction. And we just tore that equipment up. And it was interesting because when we bumped in, like not being from an election integrity world, we didn't have all those decades of history. We just knew tech. And we just knew intrinsically it had to be insecure. And some of the old guard in election security, they were like, oh no, you can't do it. I'm like, what do you mean we can't do it? I've got the machines, we're doing it. And they're like, well, then we don't want to associate with you because what happens if you can't find vulnerabilities? Then we're discredited. Like, how do we ever credibly say that there's problems with equipment if you guys don't find vulnerabilities? And we're like, listen, we're gonna find and they got worried and some of them backed out. It's just like, okay. And so what it takes is, you take something that the manufacturers don't want you to look at. It comes into contact with this community, and then reality emerges. And then once you have a realistic conversation, the reality, the ground truth, Now you can have informed debates. Now you can have real conversations about the reality instead of all this nonsense, right? I think that was probably our best contribution, was that we allowed the conversation, to progress. And on a side note, right, out of the blue, we were getting threatening letters, and the Attorney General for the state of California, out of the blue, wrote a letter to the manufacturers. We had nothing to do with it. Wrote a letter to the manufacturers basically saying, what was it, back off or stop?
Yeah, basically. And then the Harvard Cyber Law Clinic tweeted out, "We will defend the voting village against all of
Yeah,
this."
and so it's like you're going to go against the Attorney General, Kamala Harris, or you're going to go against Harvard. It's like, okay, come on down. And that was enough to back them off. And now, years later, it allowed the seed to be planted, and then this incredible team behind me, they've grown the seed into what it is now. But if you look at it, it was just that first bit, getting your hands on the tech and not being intimidated and having some protection. And it's allowed things to progress. So anyway, so that's my big contribution. I hand it back to the experts, and thank you for coming.
So I should also point out that's Jeff Moss. He runs DEF CON. And has been our gracious host for this for 10 years now. I just want to add a little bit to the history of how we got here, and also tell you a little bit about what's ahead. And then we'll kick off in earnest our first keynote talk. In 2016, a number of different groups of security researchers, including myself, but also others, filed in a process run by the Librarian of Congress for an exemption to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to cover good faith security research, and very broadly. And this is a process enshrined in law that basically allows people who want to engage in conduct that would otherwise potentially be prohibited by probably the worst law in security in the United States, that prohibits essentially reverse engineering of any kind of protection mechanism. So the kinds of things you do when you examine hardware and software can easily risk running afoul of the DMCA. One of our most important talks was from Tori Noble, who came in to talk earlier. I hope some of you were there, talking about some of the details of this law and how the exemption to it works. So in 2016, we filed for a broad exemption for good faith security research. And among the things that we called out as needing security research that should be exempt from the DMCA was voting equipment. This was basically cast as a product safety mechanism, that we should be able to examine the products that we depend on for various kinds of things, from medical devices to voting machines to just general consumer products, without fear of retribution from companies that don't like what you find out. And to our great surprise, I testified at a hearing at the Library of Congress. This was largely unopposed. The voting machine vendors didn't show up. It wasn't really on their radar. Some of the medical device manufacturers opposed it, but only kind of half-heartedly. And it was granted. And it was granted in very, very broad terms and called out specifically voting machines as an example of the kinds of research that they wanted to encourage. So, at the same time, Jeff and Jake noticed that voting machines were available. This exemption had happened, and apparently Jeff has a really great credit card because he was just buying up pallets and pallets of voting equipment. We can't even figure out where to store them for people to display with. So the first year of the voting village was essentially we put a bunch of machines in a room and let this community have at it. And people were discovering to our both horror and delight new vulnerabilities that hadn't been discovered previously by some of the academic studies, including ones that I've conducted myself that have been given privileged access. So the open community, even just under the very constrained time frame of just a weekend in which people are seeing the machines for the first time, was able to find things that serious grown-ups like myself completely missed. And we thought, this is an incredible success. So we have decided to do it every year. And at the same time, it has evolved into probably the premier conference on technical election security that there is. People submit their talks to describe new things that they've discovered, new countermeasures that they've discovered for making elections safer. And in fact, in our program this year, we will have several talks in which new problems with voting machines, new previously undisclosed things are being dropped. So you will have heard it here first. And we're very proud of that, and we're very grateful to all of you for your engagement with this. So you might notice we have two rooms. You are in the room where our speaking track is. Please take a look at the schedule. Every talk is really terrific. But I'm going to highlight just a couple of them as examples. Later this afternoon at 3:30, there'll be a talk. You might have heard that the federal government essentially examined and confiscated voting equipment from Puerto Rico and did an analysis on it and then never published that analysis. The people who did that analysis will be here talking about it for the first time publicly. That's an example of the sorts of things that this open community makes possible. Tomorrow, you'll be hearing from Marilyn Marks about de-anonymization of ballots in Georgia. Again, that's something that looked previously like a merely hypothetical attack, but that is actually quite efficient. We'll be talking about that. Again, the openness of our community is what makes that sort of work possible. So every talk here is going to be great. We are filming or digitally recording all of the talks. They will end up on YouTube. It takes us a while to pre-process it. It's basically just us, and we don't really know what we're doing. So give us a few weeks for the talks to end up on YouTube, but they'll be available for you to look at. But of course, that's nothing like being in the audience here. We also have the voting machine hacking lab next door, in which we have a variety of equipment. We have write-ups on the background of that equipment, things that have been previously discovered, and all of us will be hanging around there and are glad to talk to you. We have election officials who come, and many of whom identify themselves as such. Some of them are a little more low-key. One of the wonderful things about this community is that when we started, there was this adversarial relationship between the vendors, election officials, and security researchers such as us. There was a sense that if you discovered a vulnerability in a system, you were the problem rather than the vulnerability. So it was very much like general internet operating system security was 25 years earlier. It hadn't matured to the point where people understood that weaknesses only go away if people are able to engage with them, discuss them, discover them, and reveal them. That hadn't really made it into election systems when we started the Voting Village. We got threatening letters all the time, as Jeff pointed out. We foolishly, recklessly ignored them for the most part, and that worked out. Today, that adversarial relationship is still there. You don't see many of the major vendors here. They are suspicious of us, but
They're probably here.
they're probably here, but they won't identify themselves, and they're recording everything we're saying, waiting for us to make that misstep. But you know, we have election officials from all over the country here who are coming to learn about things, coming to share their perspectives and their unique problems, and are seeking both advice and also helping us understand how elections actually work in progress. So really, both the talks and the lab next door are part of a really important conversation that isn't happening for the most part anywhere else. So thank you all for coming. Our next talk will be our first keynote in about 7 minutes from Kevin Shelley, former Secretary of State of the state of California, who was an early pioneer of making election systems more secure and trustworthy. So thank you, everybody.